coming. My name is Dirk Moss. I'm a member of the Town and Country Green Team Commission. I'd like to acknowledge an elected official who's in attendance tonight, John Benegas, Alderman from Ward 4.
Dressed for the occasion, too.
Yes, nice and green. Before you leave tonight, you've probably heard this before, but take a reusable grocery bag from the laundry basket back there. You guys aren't taking enough. They're still filling up my basement. We have a speaker for next month, and the topic is permaculture. And I don't have it memorized. Permaculture is a branch of ecological design and ecological engineering which develops sustainable human settlements and self-maintained agricultural systems modeled from natural ecosystems. So please put that on the calendar, the third Thursday of August.
This is known as Grace and Coordination.
Who's speaking? Her name is Deanna English. And Bill Rupert, I believe you have an announcement.
Oh, okay, great. I brought a few copies of this with me. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Grow Native program, which has been a program to promote the use of native plants in the landscape. That program has been housed at the Missouri Department of Conservation for the last 10 years, and recently it's found a new home. The new home is the Missouri Prairie Foundation. So what it's done is it's kind of gotten Grow Native out of a government umbrella, and now it's in a not-for-profit group that really will allow Grow Native to go beyond state lines here in Missouri. Well, there's going to be an event on August 30th that will be the ceremonial transfer of Grow Native from Department of Conservation to the Missouri Prairie Foundation. It's going to be in Jefferson City, and the keynote speaker for this event is a gentleman by the name of Doug Tallamy, who wrote this wonderful book. I don't know if any of you have ever read it, but if I heard Doug speak at the Missouri Botanical Garden in March, and I'll have to say, when you've heard Doug speak, you will look at the landscape in a whole different way than you ever have before. So I'll leave you a little bit in suspense of what that means, but I have to say I've really enjoyed reading his book, and he's a wonderful speaker. He's a professor of entomology at the University of Delaware, and he looks at the landscape from the perspective of all the insects and the birds and the wildlife that rely on the landscape to be part of their habitat, but it also relates to the speaker tonight in that honeybees require plants in the landscape as well. So I will leave a few copies of the information, and Dirk can forward it on as well about this speaker. So it's going to be at Lincoln University. I went to Lincoln University for the first time in my life last week. I always heard about Lincoln University. They have a beautiful native plant display that will be on part of the tour for this August 30th event. So I'll leave you with Dirk, and it's a very nominal fee for hear him speak. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Tonight's speaker is Yvonne Von Der Ahe. All right. She's very knowledgeable about bees and beekeeping. She teaches classes at St. Louis Community College. You run a honey farm. Yes. So
Yes.
And so we're delighted to have her here tonight. There will be honey and other products for sale after the talk. So please help me welcome Yvonne.
Who here is interested in becoming a beekeeper? Yay, we need more beekeepers. More. And it's so much fun. Okay, at any rate, I'm going to breeze through my slides, zip, history of honey. You know, it's been 10,000 years that people have been gathering honey. This is a cave painting of a woman on a rough-hewn ladder, you know, collecting honey from a hive, and so that's how they did it before, you know, before we had the hive and all that kind of thing. In Egypt, honey was used for baking and embalming. During the Roman Empire, you could use it to pay your taxes. You know, in Greece, they dipped their fingers in the honey before entering the new home. And we all know about honeymoon. The father of the bride supplied the couple with mead, which is a honey wine for the first moon of their marriage. And that's how that came about. So, honeybees are not native to America. You know, you think of the honeybee as being here forever, but no, the settlers brought the bee over in 1622 on one of their ships. And of course, those settlers also brought their seeds and their plants from the old world here. And so a lot of that, you know, was part of what they did. They brought a dark bee with them. That's the Apis mellifera. Most bees now are the Italian ones, the Apis mellifera linguistica, simply because that one is more gentle. They are more, can handle the different climates. You don't make a tremendous amount of propolis for their hive. And finally, they don't swarm as much as the German and the other ones. Let me think, what else? We'll talk more about how the settlers raised their bees and how they moved across the continent as we go along. Okay. Why is the honeybee important today? It's the main source pollinator for many agricultural crops, almonds, apples, blueberries, cucumbers, squash, melons, strawberries, etc. Their products of the hive include honey and beeswax and pollen and propolis and royal jelly and bee venom. Okay, now, this is breakfast with the honeybee, and this is breakfast without the honeybee. Now, you'll notice that there's no fruit, you know, or nuts in their granola. There's no fruit on the plate. There's no jam on the toast. There's no cream in the coffee. Why isn't there cream in the coffee?
Because there are flowers for the cows to eat.
Because cows eat or need a good source of protein, which is supplied by alfalfa. No alfalfa, no milk. So, and of course, no juice. And the other thing that's interesting is sorry, I can't see over here. Okay, make yourself at home. The coffee plant is also partially pollinated by the honeybee. So you might not have your coffee either. There's much of it. So bees are important. Honey, the bees produce honey as a food source. That's what they're doing. They're making honey to feed their bees. Its carbohydrates and water includes your vitamins, your minerals. It has the flavonoids. It has the phenolic acids, which act as antioxidants. And you know about antioxidants, how they're supposed to be good for you and take care of those free radicals. Table sugar is sucrose. It's made up of glucose and fructose. Now notice, sugar, 16 calories per teaspoon, and honey, 22 calories per teaspoon. Oh my God, more calories. But honey is 1.5 times you're not going to use as much. And also it has a lower glycemic index than sugar, so it's absorbed more slowly. One of the products that the bees make is beeswax, and they secrete this wax from their they're called hypopharyngeal glands here on their abdomen, and they ooze this wax. And then they use that to form the caps. I'm going to pass this around. See, this is a touchy-feely class. This is a piece of burr comb, and it's kind of gotten smashed, but this, you notice how light colored this is? This has only had honey in it. Notice this, how dark it is? This has had eggs and larvae and bees raised in it. So you can kind of feel that. And I'm going to pass this around here. Smell. Oh, it's heavenly. At any rate, they make beeswax uses for waterproofing, as a lubricant, as a seal. You see it in furniture polish and soap and lip balm and hand cream and bullet lube and candles and cosmetics and pharmaceuticals, and the people that quilt use it for their sewing thread, and you have your artistic applications. So beeswax is pretty wonderful. And when it burns, it has such a sweet, wonderful, scent. And the other thing is, a burning candle will produce negative ions, which theoretically are good, and healthy and all that kind of stuff. The other thing is bees collect pollen in their pollen baskets, and we have pictures of the pollen basket, but it's actually their hind legs, and they kind of, when they go to a flower, the pollen collects on them, and then they brush it down and kind of put it in these pockets on their hind legs. And I have a picture of one so that you can see what that looks like. Pollen is their protein. You have the nectar is their carbohydrate. So when they go to a flower, they're collecting either nectar or pollen, depending upon what the hive needs. Nectar if they're going to make honey, pollen if they need more protein in their hive. You can collect the pollen from the hive. Now, this is pollen. So I'm going to pass this around. I had a drop of honey on that lid. Excuse me. Okay, so now here, okay, take just a little bit. Now people can be allergic to pollen, so take just a tiny bit. Yes, take a little bit here. Take one for you. Okay, and here you take. Okay, now, and it kind of has a nutty taste to it. Some people like it. Okay, and they say that that it's very good for you. Who knows? I eat it. Okay, now propolis. This is propolis along here, and what they say about propolis is if the space is smaller than 1/4 of an inch, if they in their hive, they'll put propolis. If it's bigger than 3/8 of an inch, they'll put wax. So, and that's called bee space. So, but they'll coat the inside of their hive with propolis. They'll, cover any holes in your hive to make it nice and warm for the winter time. And this is propolis in here, so I'll pass this around so you can touchy feel on this. Okay? And notice my gloves. This is what happens. The propolis from the hive gets them all dirty. They used to be pretty and clean. Now this is what they look like. At any rate. Okay, propolis is used for all kinds of medical and commercial uses. I make like a propolis tincture that is good for acne. I make a propolis salve, wound care salve that is, good for, better than any antibiotic ointment, because propolis is antibacterial, antifungal. So it does good things for you. And used to be early, before we had our fancy dental stuff, they would use the propolis for sore teeth, and the person would chew on a piece of propolis if they had a toothache and that kind of thing. Okay, royal jelly. Now, this is a larva here, and it's sitting on a bed of royal jelly. Royal jelly is secreted from the hypopharyngeal glands. It's fed to all larvae in the colony for the first couple days. Okay, then depending upon whether you're a queen or whether you're a drone or a worker bee, then your diet is diversified from there. But for the first couple days, everybody gets the royal jelly. It's collected and sold as a dietary supplement, and it's exceedingly expensive because when it's collected, they take little tiny spoons and dip it out of these little cells. Yes, yes. Which is one of the reasons why it's so expensive. So,
And then they have to separate the larva from it.
well, they're good, so they kind of just move the larva over and scoop the jelly up. It's kind of. Okay, bee venom. As many times as I have been stung, I will never have arthritis. Bee venom is one of the treatments that they do use for arthritis, and they have done studies to show that it is, that it does have some good effects on it. But venom is used for high blood pressure and varicose veins and bursitis and tennis elbow and MS. Big use for MS. They're doing studies on Parkinson's. You see it you see studies being done that for these conditions, because there's been the anecdotal evidence that it's been successful. So now they're doing actual scientific studies. And, it works. Go ahead.
Have native cultures been using this a long time? Is there a history of all this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where does the bee venom come from? From dead bees or from?
Well, what you do is you get a jar, empty jar, and you scoop up about 15, 20 bees, and you have like tweezers, and you take the little, and where is your problem today? Is it your knee?
I don't mean to be
So, she has a sore knee. So we're going to take the little bee with our tweezers, and we're going to put it on her little leg and squeeze it, and it goes, oh, ouch! So, you know, if she has like arthritis in her knee, she'll have maybe 6, 8 stings, you know, and have that like twice a week initially. And just know that. And then, you know, as her arthritis improves, it goes to once a week, and then, you know, every 2 weeks. But yeah, you know, it does show improvement over time.
And the
So,
bees don't survive that year.
no, dear, they die. Poor little bees.
So why can't they just extract it? Like from the tooth of, like from the tooth of a snake?
Someday I'm sure they will. But until they get to that point, it's food and squeeze. Okay, now, keep in mind, I know it sounds traumatic, but, you know, the first time you get stung, it hurts like heck. And the second time, it doesn't hurt quite as much. And eventually you get to the point of, oh heck, another one, you know, and it's not thrilling. So, okay. There's 3 types of bees in the colony. There's the queen, the worker, and the drone. The queen obviously is a female or girl. The worker is another girl, and the drone is the boy. Now notice how big her abdomen is, you know, and that's big because she has all these eggs in her, okay, and sperm, okay, and of course the worker bee is the pretty little bee, and here's your drone. Now notice the drone's eyes are big, and you can't quite see it on here, but they have a much broader, thicker body, and that's so that they can catch the queen. Okay? Now, it only takes 16 days to become a queen, takes 21 days to become a worker, and 24 days to become a drone. Okay, the first 3 days, they're eggs, and then they go up into the different larval stages. And then at this point, they spin their cocoon and they transform into the actual bee. And so we have here a baby. Well, this is an egg, and then you have the larva grow, grow, grow. And at this point, it's gone into its cocoon. And then as it develops, this is what it looks like. Okay. The queen. You mark your queen simply because it's easier to spot her. You know, she's not born with that spot. You take some paint and you go, she's an egg-laying machine. You want her to do 2,000 eggs a day. Okay, in her, you know, in the springtime, or, you know, that's because you want as many bees in the hive as possible. She produces pheromones that maintain the colony cohesion. It regulates the reproduction. The stronger her pheromones, the better your colony and more cohesive it is. Well, I have here three years, but 4 years in the wild, 2 years if you're a beekeeper. Okay. And what happens is in the wild, as she ages, her pheromones will decrease, and then the worker bees say, hey, something's wrong with this queen. We need a new one. And they'll go to work and start one. She has a little bit different, you know, her proboscis is shorter. She doesn't collect pollen. She has a stinger, but it doesn't have barbs. And the only thing she stings are rival queens. She kills them. Her spermatheca can hold 7 million sperm. When she comes out of her cell, And this is a queen cell. So picture this attached to here, like that. Okay, kind of like that. Anyway, be gentle. Okay. Anyways, she emerges from her cell. She stays for 5 to 7 days. Then she flies to what's called the drone congregation area, and she will meet and mate with hopefully 15 to 20 drones. The more, the merrier. You know, it's better for the genetics of the hive and everything. And she'll do that usually a couple days, and then she'll come back to the hive and then kind of get her act together. And in about 5 to 7 days, she'll begin to lay eggs. Okay, and then she never leaves the nest again unless she swarms. Unless the nest gets overcrowded and they decide to swarm. Okay, it takes, as we know, 21 days for the first eggs to emerge. So from the time she comes out to the day where you're starting to get newbies, it takes 51 days. The drone, you can see here how big the eyes are and how thick the body is, and it has these big wings, you know, as opposed to this kind of little baby girl here. And they have the big eyes so that they can spot the queen when she comes. They have the bigger, more muscular body so they can mount her and, you know, inseminate her. Okay, drones are unfertilized eggs. Okay, they are mature to mate in 12 to 13 days after they emerge. They have no stinger, they can't secrete wax, they can't gather honey, they can feed themselves.
Oh, wow.
But they do nothing for the colony. Nothing. Their only purpose in life is to inseminate the queen. And of course, once they mate with the queen, they done.
Oh,
It's a one-time thing. Now, in the fall, when the nights start getting chilly, the bees don't need boys in the hive during the wintertime. So the worker bees kick them out, and they die.
So they're kind of freeloaders. Wow.
Yes, exactly. Okay, here now. Notice this is a pollen basket on her back leg. Okay, and you can see the little pollen here that she has all over her head. Okay, they're busy from the time they emerge. They have progressive duties. They have an average lifespan of 35 to 45 days. And, you know, of course, the fall-born ones live through the winter because they need to take care of the new spring bees. Okay, if you're a girl, this is what your life is like. The first 2 days, you clean cells, you keep the brood warm. The next 3 days, you feed the older larvae. The next 6 days, you feed the younger larvae. From 12 to 17, you do that wax thing, you build comb, you transport food. The next 4 days, you guard. Then, the remainder of your life, you are busy collecting. Whether it's pollen or whether it's nectar or propolis or water, you're busy. They say that a worker bee has about 4.5 miles of wings, and that's what happens. You know, they go out on their foraging duty, and they can't come home because, you know, their wings deteriorate over time, so they just can't make it home. And so they die, that's it. But they're ever so cute.
It sounds like my life.
Possibly. Okay.
Yes, they do.
We've all heard about the dances that the bees do. The worker bees, they dance, or they do what's called the waggle dance, or they do the round dance. And the waggle dance tells the bees in the hive the direction of the nectar source, or the pollen, or whatever it is they're looking for, and how much is there. So they go and wiggle as they go. So, and they'll go like this, and like this, and like that, in this kind of dance. And as they wiggle and do in this shape, the other bees kind of touch them with their antenna, and it's communicated to them, the direction and how distant it is and all that. And so that's the waggle. Now, if it's near, then they do a round dance, and that's a round dance, like that, to tell you where it is. Okay. At one time, the bees were kept in these straw skips, and so this is what the inside of it would look like. And of course, there's what would happen, or they could use logs or jars, that kind of a thing. And you know that they have found honey in pyramids that is like, how old are pyramids? 2,000 years old. It's still good. Honey never spoils. It crystallizes, but it doesn't spoil. At any rate, what they would do is they would, take this and take the straw off, and you'd have your hive here. And how they would extract this is to just crush it and strain it. So of course that killed the bees, the little larvae, everything. So, and the bees that escaped would go and form a new hive in a tree, and then come springtime, the settlers would go look for the bee trees and grab them and bring them back and put them in these skips again. Very bad for the bees. But, okay. In 1853, Reverend Langstroth figured out this thing called bee space that we talked about. The 1/4 inch they fill with propolis, and above that, the 3/8 inch they fill with wax. So, and he figured that out. So he devised this box that had the different, so that you have a hive stand because you want it off the ground, and you have a bottom boards. And they use now, or recommend for the most part, a screened bottom board, simply because we have the mite problem now, and we'll talk about that. So, but you have the bottom board, and then you have what's called a deep super. Now or a hive body is really what it's called. Here in Missouri, you need 2 of these for the bees to go through the winter. And then you have, in the springtime when there's the nectar flowing, you put a queen excluder on because you don't want the queen going up there and laying eggs in your super box. That's your honey that you want to take off. Then you have an inner cover, and then you have an outer cover. Okay, and this is a brand new wax frame. This is what you want your hive to look like with all those little bees. And this is a frame of sealed honey. Now, I brought this along so you can see. This is this. And is a plastic, and I'll show you that in a second. But this is built out so that this is what they would put the honey in. Okay, well, that's a deep frame though. This is what the frame would look like in your honey super, the one that you're going to collect. Where it starts out looking like this, and then the bees build the comb. Now, they have this plastic now, which is very nice, and works almost as good as the pure wax, depending upon. So, but what a lot of people will do, beekeepers will do, is they'll use the plastic in their hive bodies where the bees live, and they'll use the wax in their honey supers, simply because bees like the honey supers made out of wax better than they like it made out of plastic. Okay, additional equipment that is needed. You have, I won't pass this around because it's really grubby. But this is a smoker, and so you build a little fire in here and puff, 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 and it creates smoke. This is a bee brush, and you use it to get the bees out where you don't want them. And then these are hive tools, two different types of hive tools, and you can see they get really grubby with the propolis. But these boxes, propolize it so it sticks together. And the same way with the frames, they glue them in. So you have to have your hive tools so you can look at them. Okay. I won't pass these around, but you can have a brother. Oh, veil. Okay. Veil. Jacket. I like the jacket. Some people use the full outfits, but this is what I use, simply because I like it better than the full. And of course, I have my gloves for when I wear gloves. Okay. You can see these two little people are busy putting supers on their hives. Okay. Beekeeping basics. A beginner's kit. That Langstroth hive that we saw with the hive body and the supers and that will cost you now around $350. Okay, and each additional hive will cost you $200, $225 probably. Bees, you can get a 3-pound package. This is called a package, and it's 3 pounds. And they mail this.
We like it.
Yes, yes, yes. And what you do is you have to call the post office to let them know that you're going to expect it. And if it arrives there at 3 a.m., you'll get a phone call that says, "Come get these bees," because you have 3 pounds of bees, and it scares the heck out of the poor postal people. But you see this can, the can is sugar water, so that the bees have something to eat on their trip here. And also in here is a queen cage. And this is a queen cage. And in the queen cage, you'll have the queen bee and about 4 worker bees to take care of her. And so this will also be in here. So I'll pass that around. And there's a dead bee in there, so sorry about that. Anyway, so package is a nice way to get started. You can also get a 5-frame nuke, which is 5 frames of bees. You saw that one picture of all the bees? So a 5-frame nuke would have 3 frames of bees like that with brood, and then you'd have a frame of honey and a frame of pollen on the side, so 5 frames. And of course, if you start off with a 5-frame nuke, boom, you're in business and kind of maybe can have honey your first year. If you start off with a package, don't expect honey your first year. Space required. Backyards in urban areas are wonderful places for bees. You know, city people plant flowers, you know, so there's lots of nectar sources. And a small yard can usually accommodate 2 hives. Now, the bees will go to the nearest water source. If that's your neighbor's swimming pool, that's where they're going to get their water. So if you don't have an immediate water source, you need to set up something right by the hive, because they will go visit your neighbor's swimming pool. Okay, so that's an absolute. The other thing is situating a hive in the yard. You know, you want to have it face east, southeast, you know, so that it gets the morning sun and gets warm and all that kind of stuff. It needs to have some kind of a windbreak behind it. They say that a little bit of afternoon shade is good. So all these things are important for deciding where you're going to put it. Okay, we talked about hive inspections. Once you get into it, it takes 15-20 minutes per hive. And you need to do this every 10 days, during the season, simply to see what's going on. Okay, Missouri honey plants. In the spring you have your clovers, your legumes, your tulip, poplar trees, dandelions. They love dandelions. Maple trees, locust trees, your basswood, your fruit trees, your berry plants. In summer and fall, they do soybeans and garden plants and ornamentals and asters and goldenrod and milkweed and sunflowers. So there's all kinds of good nectar sources out there. Now, honey, there's all kinds of honey, and basically, you've heard of, orange blossom honey and tupelo honey and clover honey and all those kinds of things. And what they do to get those varieties is they'll put their supers on during, like when the oranges are blossoming. And then they'll remove those and extract those when the orange trees have stopped blossoming. Okay, and then they can call it orange blossom honey. Basically, the lighter the color, the milder the honey, the darker, the stronger it is. You have some forest honey that is, dark and looks like molasses. Forms of honey liquid. Liquid is liquid. It's a good thing. Easy to pour, what can I say? Now, all honey granulates. All honey granulates. Okay, that's not a bad thing. If it granulates, you simply put it in, put the bottle in some warm water. Don't nuke it in your microwave, because that will scorch it and then make it taste bad. Okay. In the United States, most honey is sold in the liquid form. Comb honey is the wax filled with honey. Okay, and that's a wonderful taste. You know, if you do ever have comb honey, chill it before you serve it. It kind of makes it easier to cut and to get, and of course, store it at room temperature. Whoops. Come on. Chunk honey simply is liquid honey with a chunk of comb. Okay, cream time. What do we do with our sticks? Okay. Everybody has to taste the cream honey. In Europe, this is how most honey is, a lot of honey is sold. And, pardon? Oh, you can't heat it, it won't cream if it's, okay. We did this together here. Okay, here, take it as because. Okay, and I have to brag. I won blue ribbon at the state fair with my cream honey. I also won ribbons with my liquid honey. And with my wax, by the way.
Triple crown.
Anyway, creamed honey is 100% honey. It's what you're doing is, remember I said all honey granulates? What you're doing is you're controlling the granulation process. Good creamed honey is smooth, like peanut butter, not gritty at all. Okay, and that's how you want it. You store, all honey is stored at room temperature. Don't put it in your refrigerator. That contributes to the granulation process. And if it's creamed honey, you have to keep it at room temperature, not where it's warm, because then it will start to liquefy.
Let me ask you one thing about hives now in this temperature. What happens to your honey, your comb? I mean, the bees are the most amazing things that you've ever seen in your whole life. If you had a piece of tissue paper and you held it outside the entrance to the hive, on one side of the hive it would go in, and on the other side it would go out. And the bees are in there flapping and cooling the place down. So, and they circulate, the air circulates. So it's just absolutely amazing. But it's still 110. I mean,
but not in the hive.
They can't make it cooler.
Pardon?
I mean, they could blow air, but they can't make
Yeah,
air
but
cooler.
it cools it down, honest. Cools it down, yeah, I know.
So the answer is they do fine.
They do just fine. Yeah. Yeah, they are absolutely amazing.
Great creamed honey.
Thank you.
You could win an award at the fair.
Pardon?
You could win an award at the fair with it.
Okay, let me think. I lost my book. Oh, I told you to put it in some warm water. Okay, colony collapse disorder. This is a problem. Okay, not only CCD, but simply our bees have been, there's these viruses and there's these mites and there's these thises and there's these that's that have all affected the honeybees since the 80s. You know, it used to be if you were an old beekeeper back in the 70s, you put the supers on in the spring and you came back and got a whole bunch of honey. And you didn't have to worry about, oh, are my bees healthy or not? Now you have to. Most of the actual CCD you see in the commercial beekeepers. And this is because commercial beekeepers
move hives for pollination purposes. And they move them to monocrops, you know, your almonds, and then your oranges, and then your whatever else. So the bees don't have a variety of pollen sources and nectar sources. So their immune system is not as good as my honeybees. And so, you know, that contributes to the problem. But they've done all kinds of research. They're doing all kinds of research. Monsanto has recently, well, last year, they bought this Israeli company called Beekeeping, and they are doing research into the RNA and DNA to look at different ways to control the problems that are affecting bees. And I really think that that's the answer, because your chemicals are not going to be the answer. You know, I don't like chemicals in my hive. I don't do chemicals in my hive unless I have a drastic problem. I've got to have it. Yeah, so, but, at any rate, so this is a big problem. And one of the offshoots of this is because the bees are taking more time, you know, more time to take care of and to worry about and to do all this kind of things, the number of beekeepers is going down. So I want to encourage you to become a beekeeper, because we need beekeepers. We have to import quite a bit of the honey that we use. You know, we don't produce enough.
So what is the actual weekly or day-to-day time? I mean, I know you said it takes 15 to 20 minutes to...
Okay, we're going to keep calm.
Okay.
We're almost there.
I have a question about pesticides. Now, maybe you don't use them in your hive, but what about the plants that they go visit? Is there
Yes,
toxicity
they bring
that
it,
back to
they
them?
bring it back, and sometimes you'll have a pesticide killed. You know,
From
that's why if you have your hive someplace, the farmer, you know, there's a website, you can say, my hive is here, and the farmer is supposed to check the website to see if he has any hives close by. And so if he does, then he has to coordinate with you when he does his pesticides. That's what he's supposed to do. Okay, but these places like Kim Lawn and Green Lawn and that's up there. So, you know, you have to be very much aware, because, yeah, they can spray and it can kill your hive.
What do you do when the farmer calls you, says I'm about to spray?
Pardon?
What do you do when the farmer says I'm about to spray?
Okay, well, you want him to spray in the evening time, you know, early evening, when the bees start to come home, so that they're not out in the field foraging, or in the early morning. You know, his choice of pesticides, you know, might be important to, you know, and if you know bad things are happening, you can put an entrance, you know, not a reducer, but you can put a screen on your hive and keep the babies home for that day. You know, so there's different things you can do.
How do you manage that for urban beekeepers? Because inevitably somebody in the neighborhood.
You talk to your neighbors. You talk to the neighbors about different ways of treating their lawn and treating their weeds. Yeah, it's a problem. Okay, 10 things you can do. Become a beekeeper. Protect swarms. You know, if you got a swarm on a tree, call a beekeeper. They'll come get it. Plant your garden with bee-friendly plants. Buy local honey. Local honey. Oh, and I didn't talk about that. Raw honey. Raw honey has all the good things in it. When you heat and filter honey, it removes all the good things, you know, and kills the proteins and all that kind of bad stuff. So if you're not going to have raw honey, you might as well be eating sugar water, okay? So, and so when you go to the grocery store, look for the raw honey, for a local beekeeper. Don't do the sous vide
Yeah.
or any of that ultra-filtrated stuff. Okay. Beekeeping. January, get your act together. Check your hives. If they're light, you have to feed them. February, open up the colony. Look how they're doing. The queen better be laying eggs. Feed them if they need feeding. March, you reverse the brood chambers simply because during the winter time the bees will start in the lower hive body and then they'll eat their way up in this kind of cluster that looks kind of like a football. And so by springtime they're up in the top hive body. You want them down in the bottom so that they'll fill the top ones, so you flip them. Replace your queens every other year. You don't want your queens, you don't want swarms because that decreases the population of your hive. And you can see this is a queen cell right here. Okay, inspect for diseases, feed if necessary, get your supers ready. April is critical. Put the supers on. When the dandelions and the fruit trees bloom, you got nectar. Okay, keep things together. Keep looking for swarm cells.
I'm sorry, can we go back one?
Oh, I can't.
Oh.
I don't know how to go back.
Okay, well then let me explain what I think it said. It said I need to strip your colony down. What does that mean?
Oh, it means take it apart, clean it up, because they it has debris from the winter time, and it's glued together and it's yucky, and so you strip it and look at it and replace frames if you need to do that and that kind of thing.
Spring.
Yes, exactly. Okay, May is swarming time. The colonies are overcrowded. They take off looking for more room. And so you want to, make sure that you have room in the hive. So you do things. You reverse hive bodies. You add supers. You pray. All those important things. Okay, June. Keep putting those supers on. As long as you have a nectar flow, you got bees busy doing their thing. July is your extraction time. Now, I extracted this year the first week in June, simply because our season started earlier. Anyway, so this is, and what? 2 more minutes, 1 more minute. Okay, August. Here, this is what my bees look like right now. Because they're bored and they're on me. There's no nectar flowing and they don't like it. Okay. September, check those hives, feed them if needed, and I will be feeding my hives because there's no nectar flow. And they're eating the honey that's there now. Okay. October, November, combine weak colonies, get stuff together, prepare for winter. And then December is when you, thank God. Anyway, I do have honey if anyone wants honey. I have a couple jars of creamed honey. I have candles. I have honey soap, if anybody wants honey soap. And the one thing I didn't show you was skin balm. Okay. Skin balm is wonderful. I sell lots of skin balm to nurses simply because they can put it on their hands and it lasts through several washings, and it's good for feet, and for hands and elbows and knees and all those places. Anyway, thank you very much.
You will stay around for questions?
Yes, yes. If
Yes.
anybody
Um,
has questions, just ask.
But it has been an hour, so feel free to leave if you need to leave. And before you leave, take a reusable grocery bag. If you are not on my email list and want to be, please come talk to me. Is your question for me or for?
No.
Yvonne?
Yvonne,
Okay.
when you said to mark your queen and you just put that spot of paint, what is that, like a paint marker? How did you do that? Because we looked
you
forever
can
to try to
go-
find our queen, and it would have been really helpful to have a marker.
You can go and buy the fancy markers, but you can also go over to the hobby shop and get the paint that they use to paint cars and
Just
little tiny brush or a tiny little stick. And the important thing is when you marker, don't crush her.
no.
You have to be gentle. You pick her up and you say, good bee, and go, boop. And then you have to kind of hold her for that 30 seconds it takes for it to dry.
She can't sting you, right?
What?
She can't sting.
No, she's not going to sting you. So, yes, but that, you know, the fact that you have her in your hand, the other bees are, what are you doing with our queen? You know, so, but that's why you kind of hold it down so they can, don't go too far.
A little bit.
When you feed your bees, what do you feed them? Is it like a sugar water?
Okay, this time of the year, if my hive doesn't have enough stores, it does not, you know. Right now it does, but as we go into winter, it's not. I'm going to feed them 2-to-1 sugar water. Okay? Then as the temperature, once the temperature gets below 50, if I still need to feed, I feed them sugar mush. It's 4 pounds of sugar with 1 cup of water. Mush, I like it. You know, keeps them alive. In the winter time, you know, it's moisture that kills most hives. So you have to make sure that your hive is ventilated. You have to make sure that there's enough stores for the poor bees. Or you'll be opening that poor hive and the bees will have their heads in the comb and be dead. That's a terrible thing. Other questions, thoughts, come, yes.
I wasn't good. How long have you been beekeeping?
My first year was 2008.
Oh.
Yes, so
Yeah.
I'm relatively, this is my 5th year. But you see, I'm retired, I get to play all day.
And how many hives do you have, and what's the rate of production of honey?
Okay, I have 8 hives right now. I had 10 hives last year, but I combined one in the fall and I lost one over the winter time. I don't know why, it just was ornery, I guess. But, so I have 8 hives right now, and I pulled about 400 pounds of honey. But that's not a good crop. You know, yeah, it just, you know.
It's been a tough year, hasn't it?
It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year.
Do you harvest all the honey out of?
Oh, no goodness. You harvest the honey supers. The hive bodies are theirs, and they'll fill that first.
Oh, pretty nasty to be taking all their hard work.
Yes. No, that's a bad thing to take what they need to survive the winter. You know, but they're still, right now, they're still producing eggs and still raising brood, although it's, you know, coming down. But that takes a lot of honey, you know, and pollen to raise brood.
So you have to, it's kind of like a balance you have to work on.
So it's just one harvest per year?
No, it depends. If we had a heck of a, early harvest, and the first week in June, I took that off and I thought, we'll have more. But of course, then it got hot and it got dry and there's nothing going on now. So normally, I would have not harvested till August, early August, end of July, early August. But my hives, my supers were full and, I thought, I'll do it. And I'm glad I did it.
I just wonder, have we always been this dependent on Avis to pollinate our agricultural crops?
No.
Don't we have a lot of native
We have
pollinators?
lots of, in Missouri, there's over 300 different types of bees. There's the tiny little bees, and the bumblebees, and the this bees. We have bats that are pollinators, and we have birds that are pollinators, and wasps that are pollinators. And so there's lots of different pollinators. But, certain crops are, like the almond crop is only honeybees. If you didn't have honeybees, you would have no almonds. 0. And those are really good. So it depends upon the crop. And yes, there's lots of other pollinators in Missouri. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I have handouts on Doug Callahan's talk.
Oh,